Why pro Terran players don't build a Raven. So this is a video by Hero Marine, who is a pro Terran player. Spoiler alert, chat. Spoiler alert, the reason why we don't see Terrans make a Raven in the late game is because of skill issue. Now, for some reason, this is a 50.5 minute long video. I don't quite... Okay, let's have a look. I don't think I want to watch the whole thing, but this is... We're gonna hear it from the man himself.
Hello my friends, in this video we're gonna answer one of the questions that I get frequently asked in my chat, and that is why Terran players don't build a Raven against Zergs. We could make this a little bit of mysterious, because there's a lot of questions like that I feel like that have potential. This could be a very long video, I'm not sure how long it's going to be. But basically, you can type in a question that you have, like why don't pro Terrans do this and this. I'll try to answer them in the video. I do that now because...
So obviously, streamers like Hero Marine are kind of sick and tired of that question, right? Like, it is a question that occurs all the freaking time. So obviously, the theory there is pretty easy. If you could craft your perfect Terran late game army, what would it be? Regardless of what the answer is, in theory, the anti-armor missile alone is 100% worthwhile, right? There is absolutely zero reason to not have an anti-armor missile in the mix. Obviously, the main reason, though, why a lot of people get confused is because Terrans kind of feel, especially in Zerg versus Terran, because of the way that infestors tend to be burrowed all over the map right now, and Zergs are like hiding them in all kinds of spots, they feel like it's impossible to move out onto the map without pre-scanning everything. So instead, what Terrans like to do is sit back. Now, naturally, the answer is make a Raven. Add a Raven to your unit composition because it's a mobile detector. Problem is, Ravens are expensive. They're kind of derpy. They tend to fly very far forward. This will be on the test. Yes, please pay attention. This will be on the exam. So yeah, please make sure to write down notes and do whatever. So they have also a relatively limited detection radius. That's a little bit awkward because there's no clear indicator of it. Ultimately, I think it is a skill issue. Yes. Now, playing Terran at the highest level is really freaking hard. And obviously, you know, I understand, especially with the way that Terrans like hotkey their stuff or have a hard time hotkeying their stuff. It is very difficult to actually reliably add something like this into the mix. But if you compare the Terran late game spellcasters to those of Protoss, especially to those of Zerg, like the only way we ever see Zerg players winning these days is by using every single one of the tools available. And it always kind of feels to me, and most of the StarCraft community out there, that Terrans just kind of refuse to use one of their spellcasters in the late game. We see a Raven in the early game of Terran versus Protoss. We see them in Terran versus Terran, but we never see them in Terran versus Zerg, even though in theory they're pretty dang good. So we'll find out together why Hero Marine says it's not going to be a possibility. Thank you, by the way, Hank Tank, for the 52.
This answer is not simply answered by like one sentence, because like
no.
In theory, it sounds like it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we get a Raven, we deny all the creep, we can see lurkers, we can see bird and fastest. Like, in theory, a lot of things in StarCraft sound very good, but then the answer is actually really complicated, so it might actually turn out to be a long video. I'm not sure yet how long it's going to be. So first we're going to go over the theory, and then we're going to watch a game, like a replay from Reina vs. Clem. I'm probably going to watch from the Stara Zagora tournament. And there I will kind of make my argument. So these are my reasons. You can have a different opinion. It's kind of opinion-based. Like, if you want to build a Raven, do it. But this is why I personally don't think it's good. So, yeah. Without further ado, let's get started. So first thing we're going to take a look at is the theory. So in this case, we look at the first reason, and that is the Raven detection is not as good as you think. So for this, we're going to put down like a hatchery. And first, we're going to check the range against like the queens. So we get a bunch of queens. We put a tumor here. And then we see at what range can we see the creep tumors. So here's a creep tumor. And let's see how close the Raven has to get for the Hellions to see it. So here we can see it. So basically, if the Raven is on the edge of the creep here, we can see the tumor. So right here, this is when we can see it. So how does the math works out? So the Zerg has like queens protecting. I have Hellion Raven. I want to deny the creep. You can see the Raven has to get like somewhat close.
This is actually like, it's funny. I've never really paid super close attention to the Raven detection radius, but this seems like almost the entire screen. Not quite. It's like 80% of the screen from left to right. It's actually a pretty significant radius. I thought it was smaller than that.
Is that queens have a high range against air. So like creep denial.
Yeah, one weird thing about it too, and I'm sure Hero Marine is going to bring this up, but it's the attack priority of units. Ravens are kind of derpy. They tend to fly kind of far forward, and they have a lot of attack priority too.
Ravens?
So like other units tend to snipe them down as the very first thing they can.
It's kind of like not great. There's also other reasons, which I'm probably going to explain in the reply analysis. But basically, the detection radius is not as good as you think. Like, the queens have to get somewhat close to snipe it like this. But that also makes, like, that also protects the tumor at the same time. So, the main takeaway here is the auto-target function as well, by the way. Auto-target function, there's a lot of functions. I don't know how it's called. I'm just going to randomly call it auto-target function. So there's something like prioritization in StarCraft, and that's going on here as well. So like, for example, if you have, this is a quick X-course or whatever you want to call it. So we deep dive into some other theory here very briefly, but this is very important for the understanding. So for example, you have Vikings and like a Raven, you know? So if you have like a single Marine, A-moving. So if I fly above the Marine, which unit is the Marine gonna attack out of these? So I'm just flying above the Marine. Let's see who's gonna attack. So first, it's gonna attack the Raven. What a surprise. That is not a coincidence. Ravens have basically, I'm gonna put it simple, Raven have the highest prioritization. So like, if like air units like fly, or like any units fly towards the Marine here, the Marine will essentially always target the Raven.
So, essentially what it comes down to is that every unit in the game has a certain attack priority. It seems that in general, there's a couple of rules. I don't really know all of the details either, but certain units have more attack priority than others. It seems to be based on proximity. Obviously, whatever can be attacked will be attacked. But if multiple things can be attacked at the same time, there are certain things that will be targeted earlier. Yeah. Now, obviously, the Raven here is clearly a higher attack priority than the Vikings. But this is no different from, for example, a Viper being added into the mix either. Vipers will work the exact same way. Units with higher energy have higher prio. So Sentry, Viper, Oracle. I see. Okay. Yeah, Oracles get targeted in much the same way. That's why we oftentimes see Protoss players AFKing their units a little bit and it look clumsy and you immediately get punished for it. If the rule is indeed, I don't know the fact, but if the rule is indeed, if unit has spell bar equals higher priority, that would make a lot of sense.
And that is the same thing that happens if you have like Queens and Hellions. If like Queens and Hellions come at the Zerg and like the Zerg has like Queens, the Queens will always target the Raven. So that's one reason. And then the bigger reason is the detection radius against Lurkers. So if we want to quickly take a look at the Lurker. So we get a bunch of Lurkers and we just see the range of the Lurker versus the range of detection. So we have this scenario. I have Ghost, I have a Raven. And I want to have the Raven for detection against these Lurkers. I think, yeah, the Raven detection radius should be slightly bigger than the Lurker.
I think the Lurker has an attack range of 9 with Seismic Spines. I don't know actually if he upgraded it in this particular scenario. I think the detection radius is probably like more like an 11 or something along those lines. We can actually look this up, I'm sure. Raven, Liquipedia. Thank you, by the way, Activity. Appreciate you. It should say the detection radius somewhere. Although I don't know where. Yeah, range 11. Dang. Nice guess, Loco Brain. Well done. So they have an attack range of 11, or of 9. This is an attack radius of 11. The thing is, it's obviously easier to throw a scan down, rapid fire with the ghosts, than to very carefully maneuver one Raven forward. Because obviously the Raven is, well, first off, likely to just get sniped down by any unit on the ground, or any corruptors or whatever. Or secondly, abducted by a Viper in the late game. right? That's ultimately what it comes down to. It's not so easy to just say, just make a Raven. But I do think there's a place for it. Like, we see some of those late game scenarios where Terrans can't play mass command center. Like, they don't have the chance to make 12 CCs and just scan indefinitely. And oftentimes what we see from Terrans at that point is they just awkwardly die. Now, I understand switching over to the tech lab and all that rest of it is also annoying, and it takes a lot of additional APM, but I think there is a place.
Lurker radius. So here I can see the lurkers, right? But like in a real game of StarCraft, there's something we call tolerance. Like in a real game of StarCraft, I can't be like this accurate. So in a real game of StarCraft, the Raven is probably standing here. So I can also see the lurker in the back here, obviously. And you can see the issue. Basically, the Raven is in range of the lurkers. So what is gonna happen? Vipers, abduct, dead. And the next reason, or still the same reason.
I mean, you can always EMP it. Like, if you already have the ghost, and you see the thing coming in, and you know the indirection is going... But I see the point.
To the next reason after, but the next scenario is we have Bird and Festus or something, or also lurkers. You know what could make the Raven viable is, in terms of detector, is if it had an ability like the Observer. But like the radius is simply not good enough.
Okay.
So that means when we have...
Okay, so the ability that the Observer and the Overseer has is it basically is no longer able to move, but its detection range goes up by 10%. So that, long story short, would mean that it gets about 12, maybe 13 range in detection, but it will no longer be movable. I mean, if that's what it takes, I don't think that's a bad addition to the game at all.
Here, and it's detecting. The radius is simply not big enough, and if it has a siege mode, it would be better. Or
yeah,
like
so a lot of these fights will always take place on the edge of detection too, right? So like as soon as the unit gets attacked, it will move away. So if you could siege it up, you don't have to manually chase it. Ultimately, it's an APM limitation.
Ability that would make like it detect like everything around the circle. I mean, the Raven is like much more expensive than the Observer. So if it had like some sort of ability like that, it could even like see a bird and fastest. And I think that would be a neat technique. Okay, so the next reason why a Raven is simply not great against Zerg is its abilities are kind of useless. So we have obviously the auto turret ability. The auto turrets got nerfed quite a bit.
Yeah.
And they're simply not good. Marines are better. It's kind of that simple. Well, they're kind of like decent, but also not great, if you know what I mean. They're bad against lurkers. They're basically bad against everything.
The only thing that's really good is anti-armor missile. And anti-armor missile is nice, but how much does it actually shave off of the time to kill, right? Because that's the question you really have to ask yourself. Like, say you have an army of Lingbane Ultra. How much time do you save by anti-armor missiling units? Very little. Very little. And obviously it requires a lot of additional APM. Very little counterplay either required from the opponents. Much easier to counter. Yeah, it's not so straightforward.
Because links and whatever. They cost a lot of energy. They're good in high numbers, so if I had 20 Ravens, then auto turrets would be decent. But yeah, they're like Marines without like supply, which is kind of neat, but you need a lot of Ravens for them to really be powerful. Then we have the Matrix, and Matrix is probably the most useless ability.
No,
you cannot disable anything. Like even if you disable like Vipers, they can still get their spell off. So let's say I have one Raven against one Viper, I Matrix this Raven. If I use Parabomb, the Parabomb is still gonna go up because it's a projectile like the Matrix. So as you can see, even if I Matrix the Viper, it can still do its ability. And that is also what counters mass Raven. The Viper, it counters small air units with Parabomb. And if I can't like disable it, then what is the point of like the Matrix? So auto turret is terrible, Matrix is terrible, anti-armor missile is okay, but it's also not great. Like it's kind of okay, but also like not really that necessary. You know, like it's like one of those things which is like
the Zerg
I don't mind it.
The Zerg army dies anyways, so like. Like, if it takes 3 seconds or 2.8, what's the difference?
Just getting the Raven for anti-armor missile and detection isn't the best, because anti-armor missile isn't even that good. Because, like, what happens a lot if we have, like, a huge Ling Baning army, like, let's get, like, 100 supply even. We get, like, 100 supply of Ling Baning, which is kind of normal in the game, right? Like, we have, like, a lot of Ling Bane. How many do I need to, like, get all of them, basically? Like, in order to get all of them, once again, I have to get pretty close. Look at how close. Oh, it's decently far, so... We can YOLO, like, the things off. And I need, like, 4 to get, like, the army. And then the army, it can run away, you know? Like, he doesn't have to fight. Usually, Terran is defensive. We're gonna go into that in the replay. Usually, Terran is defensive, so, like, the Zerg can just run away. Or it can just take the fight, because it's not a big deal. Or what can happen is you do anti-armor missile, and the Zerg just splits his units a little bit, and bam, like, only parts of it are hurt, you know? And it's not that great either. Like, it's okay, but it's not great. Like, it's not enough of a reason to, like, build a Raven. Because usually the Terran army has, like, a lot of ghosts. And, like, some tanks, like, some liberators, you know. That's usually, like, the Terran late-game army. Something like that. All of these units, they don't really benefit from the anti-armor missile. So a lot of times, like, this unit composition just doesn't really benefit. Like, what units do benefit? Like, Marines, obviously. So you don't really have, like, mass Marines anymore.
There's zero reason to be stuck on mass Marine in the late game unless you don't have money, at which point making other units takes priority over making Ravens. Right? Like, the only reason you would be stuck on Marine Marauder Medevac in the late game as Terran is if you are resource starved. And if you are resource starved, you can't really make Ravens. If you aren't resource starved, you end up with a unit composition that benefits very little from having Ravens. What's nice, though, is that there are options available, right? Like, I kind of feel like the other races are a lot more limited. Terran does seem to have a bit more flexibility there.
And, yeah, they just don't benefit as much. It's okay, but it's also not great.
Yeah, maybe there's a scenario where, like, if you're mineral starved and you happen to be stuck on Marine Marauder Medevac and you can just barely afford 2 Ravens, I think there is a place for them. But it's, like, very specific circumstances.
That's kind of like the next reason why Ravens kind of suck. I guess its abilities. The next reason after that is pretty simple. Ravens are quite expensive. They cost 100 minerals, 150 gas.
Yeah.
A lot of times gas is the limiting factor in a game like of TVZ late game. Gas is usually the limiting factor. So, like, you want to, like, make... Like, you have a lot of minerals, but you don't have a lot of gas, because you need to get so much gas-heavy stuff, like ghosts, like tanks, like libs, like upgrades. You usually don't even have money to get, like, extra starports, because you want to get extra factories instead. Usually, you just don't have the gas to get Ravens, and they're also, like, very expensive. They cost 2 supply. Like, an Observer costs 1 supply, is invisible, and has a siege mode. You can understand why, like, a Raven is not an Observer. Like, a Raven is far worse than an Observer. It has more HP, I guess, but, like, a Raven is bigger. A Raven doesn't have detection. Doesn't have the siege mode, sorry. A Raven isn't invisible, that's what I meant. A Raven isn't invisible. Like, an Observer, for example, is just superior. A Raven is slow. A Raven gets auto-targeted, as I've explained, because it's like a spellcaster. Spellcaster always get, like, targeted first. They have, like, the highest prioritization. If you want to have a video on that as well, I can make that too. Like, what is like
there are scenarios where I think the Raven is actually a good opportunity. Like, say you're playing against Roach Ravager and you're kind of stuck on Marine Marauder Medevac. You know, like those relatively low eco games where neither player can really go over, like, say 50 workers or whatever, and you get into, like, these weird, like, tug of war moments. If you could squeeze out a Raven there, it would be really good. And I feel like in those circumstances, it is underutilized, but in a standard game, whatever that means, it just doesn't seem like a great choice. I'm only gonna watch, by the way, until the 20-minute mark here, because the entire replay duration is very long.
Like, what units get targeted
we'll watch until yeah, the game.
How does the like how do the units like operate in StarCraft if you don't micro them, if you aim with them, whatever. But either way, like, the Raven cost is simply pretty high. It costs, like, 2 supply, which is decent, but also, like, an Observer costs 1 supply. Like, I would rather have an Observer than, like, a Raven. Doesn't have a siege mod, isn't invisible. I think that's kind of self-explained. Another reason is the Raven opening is not as good as the Banshee opening. I think I'll discuss that in the
Yeah.
In the
No,
replay
Banshee opener's way
analysis.
better.
But basically, a Raven opening simply doesn't have the same utility like a Banshee opening. A Banshee opening, what does it do? It keeps you safe against Ling. It keeps you safe against like Ravager, Ling all-ins.
Yep.
A Banshee harassment can like force spore crawlers. Like you don't have to get spores. You can't harass with Ravens because the auto turret is so weak, and like Zerg has like overlords everywhere to spot, etc. We'll go into that when we watch the replay, I guess. Another reason why Ravens are kind of not it, because scans are just better. Like in late game, you have a lot of orbitals anyway, so why don't I use scans? Like scans are just superior.
Yes.
Like why would I get?
So again, you're resource starved in the late game for gas. Orbital commands are 400 minerals for the command center, 150 minerals for the orbital. It doesn't cost any gas to get an orbital command. Plus, orbital commands can also give you the benefit, of course, of dropping down mules and, well, actually disabling the fog of war in a pinch, right? Like, it's very quick to hit hotkey 4 for your command centers and just scan. Whereas, you can know how long it lasts, you know exactly the radius, because it's very clearly displayed on the screen. It is just way less clumsy.
Worst detection, if I have literally, and you can see I'm very emotionally invested into this topic because people always make it seem like they're so smart and Terrans are stupid for not getting a Raven. But why would I get a Raven for detection if I have the best detection in the game?
Dude, this is the face of a man who has argued with too many gold leaguers. When he woke up, dude, when Gabe installed the game for the first time, he was probably Master League after his placement matches, okay? This dude never has had to deal with any of the bullshit that people throw at him all the time. He's been competing in like the absolute highest echelons of the game for so long that this is like one of those arguments that you don't even really think about anymore. Like these are complaints of the plebs. Why do we even listen to the plebs, Gabe? But Gabe, out of the goodness of his heart, is still arguing with them. He's still going in front of them and he's explaining to these dumb nerds. Well, yeah.
I have like 10 orbitals in late game. I can scan for ages. It's like so much better. It's no supply. It's essentially free. It's an investment, which makes
this is, by the way, one of the reasons why a lot of pro gamers don't create content or live stream in general. Because they're going to have to... Also, one really nice thing actually for Hero Marine is that he's very articulate. Like, Hero Marine has thought about these things and he understands clearly and can explain clearly as to why. But I've talked to many pro gamers over the years and a lot of things are just kind of... They're just are the way they are. And it's difficult sometimes to articulate as to why something is the way that it is. And it's one of the things you'll notice quite a bit with pro gamers. Like, it's not necessarily super clear as to why something works the way that it is.
Like, if you invest in command centers, you can drop mules, and over time those mules will give you enough minerals to like make it like worthwhile to get these orbitals. Terran has more like gas issues in late game against Zerg than mineral issues. So a lot of times like you have more minerals that you can spend on like command centers, especially when you're sitting defensively and you drop more mules, you get more minerals, for command centers.
Yeah.
Scans are just better. Why would I get a Raven? Scans are just so much better. They're more mobile, they're no supply, they're invulnerable. Scans are the best detection literally in the game.
Yep.
There's nothing better than scans. Like, imagine if TOS had like scans against like Zerg or Terran. Like, everybody would love to have scans every race. It's just the best detection in late game was essentially free. Well, essentially free. In the end, you still spend like a couple thousand minerals on the command centers, but it's definitely worth the investment for such great like yeah, detection.
Too much utility.
Another reason is also you have turrets. So a lot of times we'll go into...
So how about buffing the Raven and nerfing the Orbital? Am I playing a dangerous game here? Am I allowed to...
To that in the replay analysis as well. A lot of times in late game TVZ, the Terran is like camping. And if the Terran is camping, they can build a couple turrets. Cheap and easy detection. They also kind of block some
also
things.
mineral only.
Turrets are also another way to detect things, and yeah, they also have like sensor towers. So like, Terran in its nature is a little bit of a turtle race, so you don't really...
Also, the way that you kind of play the game is like you start in your main base, but as you broaden out throughout the map, you don't really go back to the main base so much, which is usually where your starports are. So it feels, I think, and this is kind of like a difficult, that doesn't really necessarily make a lot of sense, but you kind of feel like you have to expand further out onto the map. Going back, building a tech lab, flying the thing over there a half minute later to try and actually like get... It's all very time intensive and it feels clumsy. Much easier to just do this instead.
Want to push out anyways. We're a little bit of a turtle race nowadays. Especially like if the early game doesn't go well, so that's kind of how the game just works.
Yeah.
And then, let me think, I've wrote something down. Hotkeys. I haven't gotten into hotkeys. So hotkeys,
Terrans all army hotkey quite a bit in the
that
late
is
game.
a little bit of an excuse, you might call it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like much more convenient to hotkey like command centers and scan, because you have your command centers hotkeyed anyways, because you like use your command centers to build SCVs. So like I always have a hotkey for command centers. I don't have a hotkey for like ravens. And a lot of time, we'll probably go into that in the replay analysis as well. A lot of times in a real game of StarCraft, you need ravens in like multiple positions. There's a Nidus here, you attack here, and then you have to like defend another Nidus here, you know? Like a lot of times you have to defend in like 3 different locations. And the Raven can really mess up your control group, and it's like really inconsistent, because like, imagine if you micro in like 2 different
One really big
sides.
thing too about orbitals that we haven't really talked about is the fact that they don't cost supply. If you make 6 ravens, that's 12 supply, which is 4 ghosts, or 12 marines, or a bunch of medevacs. It just doesn't really make up. It doesn't really, yeah, orbital commands give supply. So if you're in a weird spot where you lose your depots or whatever, it actually gives you a lot more. Yeah.
Or 3, and then like let's pretend, like, let's just simplify it. We have like some ghost, so like we have some ghost and a raven here, some ghost and a raven here, and then maybe some bio, but let's leave it like this. So imagine you multitask over here, and then you quickly switch here, but then you realize your raven is dead. What the raven does, it's always number 1 in the priority.
Super
so, like,
annoying.
Whether the raven is alive or not.
Yeah, if you have this as a control group and you quickly want to snipe something, you actually have to select and then tab over, which is the worst. Like, it's an extra couple of actions that you really... Ultimately, StarCraft 2 is an APM limited game, right? Like, you have a certain amount of maximum APM that you can execute, and anything that, like, increases that means that you're reducing something else. So, if you have to, like, select, tap over, select a new one, it just...
You always need to tap between them. If you could, like, the hotkeys are a menace, because like if you hotkey an observer, it's never the priority, but if you hotkey the raven, it's number 1. It's always going to be on top, so it's always going to mess up your hotkeys basically, because like sometimes the raven die and suddenly like the ghosts are on top. So if the raven was like the lowest priority, if you can somehow set that up, then that would make the raven like more viable. But like if you have it in your control groups with like the ghost, and you like micro here and then you go back here, or the raven died, you have to like invest like brain energy.
Yeah, you have to check at the bottom of the screen what units are actually selected and figure out where hotkeys are. So like the one time you tap to that control group, it means that the raven is there first and you have to tap to get to your ghost abilities, which are the main abilities you use. Or you tap to the group and the raven has died, so you have to check whether or not you're then not supposed to hit tab. It gets very messy.
You don't have the time in game. You don't have the time to be like, look here, do I still have the raven in my control group? You don't do that. So like, if the raven randomly dies, suddenly the ghosts are first in the group. If the raven is alive, the raven is number 1, you can't snipe. You have to tap. And that is just causing so much confusion. It's already hard without the raven. Like, watch my games. I die to Nidus in my base all the time, Lurker Nidus. Like, I don't have any capacity to do that, and it's also incredibly inconsistent. And inconsistency is what causes, like, let's say...
So you may be wondering, why in the world does the raven take up the first seat in the selection group? This is just something Blizzard did once upon a time. They just made the game and they decided this unit takes priority in the selection panel. That's it. This is a value you can adjust. The raven really doesn't ever have to be in the top priority. Because in the matchup where you do need ravens a lot, you would put them in a specific control group. So this is like the type of hit squad control group, right? It's a little bit different. So the raven's priority in the list should be... Robot brain is important, yes. No, seriously though, the consistency in a game like this is absolutely critical, and the Raven is consistently inconsistent, which is annoying. It's spellcasters first always, right? But ghosts are also spellcasters. So when you have two control groups or two units in a control group with spellcasters, how does it determine which goes first? Apparently there's a value that allows the Raven to go ahead of the ghost. Because when they made the game, nobody ever thought about these sorts of 15-year down the line metas. Yeah, if you are a game developer or you're thinking about it, I would say that the Raven is more of a spellcaster than the ghost. It is spellcastier. Especially back in the day when it had things like the Seeker missile, it had the point defense drone, it had all of those weird abilities. Yeah, I guess all of that combined made it more of a spellcaster than the ghost.
Struggles.
Bring back the Seeker missile? No.
Like moments where like it's sloppy because like I first have to think. You don't want to think. I don't want to think like, oh, do I still have the Raven in my control group? Oh, I have to tap. No,
okay,
like,
bring back the Seeker missile, but also bring back the infested Terran. How about that?
you always want to select.
Put Black Hole back on the mothership too while we're thinking about it.
Select, bam, ghosts are selected. Select, bam, ghosts are selected. So if I somehow could set up the Raven so that it doesn't override my ghost, it doesn't override my bio.
Bring back the Herc. The Herc was a thing in like the beta of I think Legacy of the Void for 2 weeks. It never was even part of the game.
That would be a strong reason to build a Raven, but I don't think it'd be enough, but that would be a strong reason. Yeah. So no, Terrans are not lazy. The fact that it's #1 in the control group, like imagine you play Zerg. Imagine you're a Zerg player or Protoss player, and suddenly your Observer is #1. Or your Overseer is #1 in your control group. Like you have a army. A lot of times, sometimes it doesn't matter, because like Zerg doesn't have abilities. Like Zerg has like Corrosive Bile. Protoss has like Blink, something that kind of force fields, whatever. But like imagine that, like, and you had to like stim your army, you had to snipe. Like Terran has to like use a lot of abilities basically. So this is a huge problem. And you might say it's the same with Oracles, for example. But Oracles are something else. Like Oracles are the second best detection in the game. So why is like Oracles like, I should make a tier list about this, but like Oracles is basically #2 in terms of like detection. Scans are #1, I would say, and Ravens are like probably last place. Like Overseers are really good because they can also like do changelings. Like Observers are really good because they are invisible. Ravens for detection.
Ravens are definitely the worst detector
spells,
in the game.
Which are good in TVT, but the spells are useless in like TVZ. So like the Raven in terms of like TVZ detection is the worst possible thing that you can get. It's like the worst thing. Even turrets are better than like the Raven because like you're probably not attacking anyway, so you might as well just build a few turrets, I guess. Think about it like that. Like the Oracle, even if it does like the same, like overriding the Protoss army, for example, the Oracle is like worth it to have a separate hotkey because they can kind of just fly around. They are so mobile. They're much faster. They have like huge radius. Like I mean, we're in a unit test, so let's just take a look at it. Like Oracles have a huge radius. Like they don't have to get as close as the Raven. They can see stuff like so casually. Like if we have like an entire lurker position, it's like even it goes.
The fact you can shift queue it is massive.
Like it goes even above like pure detection. It like literally reveals the units and like tags them. So I can reveal like an entire position from like this range and just go away. There's no way I can get abducted. If I have like feedback as well, I can just get out. The Oracle is super fast. The Oracle has 5.6 speed. The Raven has 4.13 speed. So like, if there was like a Terran Oracle like this, the Oracle can also like attack. It has great abilities. It can do stasis ward, great ability. It can attack, great ability. So like in that regard, the Oracle is just way superior. Even though it also like overrides your hotkeys. So I think that explains it pretty well.
Yeah, but it's also the way that you control it, right? Like obviously the Oracle goes on a separate control group. It is not part of a hit squad of units. At least you should put it on a separate control group. Whereas the Raven, you kind of want to have it together with, like, for example, a group of Ghost or Marauder Marine or whatever, right? Like, it gets a little bit different. All right, so there's an entire replay analysis here too that's like 30 minutes long that I don't really want to go ahead and watch, but I think we kind of understand the general gist of it, right? So it's really two things. Why don't Terrans build Ravens against Zerg? First off, skill issue. Secondly, resources just don't line up for it whatsoever. Resources as in minerals and gas, but also the amount of APM required. And APM really is a resource in the late game for Terran. For every race in StarCraft 2. It just doesn't really make sense. In isolation, if you look at an engagement, it's like, yeah, Raven would make this perfect, right? It would make it way better. And there are some niche scenarios where I think a Raven can be good, but in most situations, orbitals are just better. Yeah, when you're playing against Zerg and you're already playing like the Nidus Worm Whack-A-Mole, and you already have to slow push your way forward, it is so much easier to slow push with a missile turret even than it is with a Raven, because you don't have to go back, switch over your tech labs. The reactors suddenly are wacky. If you need to go back to making Liberators, you have to go and remove the starport out of the tech lab again, start making 2 of those things again at once. Maybe you need a Viking or 2 or Medevac production. You need to. It all gets very messy. It just overcomplicates the game a ton. It's a lot of little things that make the game harder. And ultimately, it is a skill issue, but it's also one of those things where you have alternatives that are just better. So why bother?